So like, remember that, like, people get confused on proof because there's scientific proof and there's logical proof. We're looking just really for emotional proof. That's what we're looking for. Things that make people, make it feel believable.
Yep.
So,
and one question here from Thomas, I want to get real quick. He said, so it almost sounds better to say I discovered the secret from another authority source rather than just myself. And I'll just say, typically, yes. And if you want proof, here we go, more proof. Now you have to think, wait, is this real proof or bullshit proof? Because now you know it, right? But you look at proof, what's the best-selling book of all time? Right, the Bible, right?
Yeah.
And think about like the story of Moses, right? When he came down with the 10 Commandments, did he write those 10 Commandments? Can you imagine if he came down from the hill and he's like, hey guys, I just put together this new book, we're all gonna live this way. People are like, get the fuck out of here, dude. But he comes down and he's like, hey, there's a really smart dude up here. He gave me these 10 commandments for us to live by. All of a sudden, it's much more easily accepted.
Yeah. So we've gone through stories, we've gone through proof. The other thing you want to start researching on is promise. What is a promise you can make to your reader or to your prospect or avatar that's really gonna just wake them up? Like, I like the quote, I think it was John Carlson's quote, like, grab people by the throat, throwing down and stomp their greed glands until they bleed. I mean, that's the kind of level of proof, a promise we're trying to get to. Another one is like the idea of a mule kick promise. Like, a promise is so hard to fulfill that you or your client, if you're a freelance copywriter, is going to feel like they get kicked in the balls with a mule trying to think of how they actually fulfill it. I mean, that's what I mean by like a promise with balls. I'll give an example here of a promise with balls. This is from End of America, like one of the first early iterations of it. And, it's like the most powerful, the most important event in the next 50 years. And, he's talking about something that's going to literally shake the foundations of America. That's a pretty big promise. It's talking about things where it's going to bring our country and our way of life to a grinding halt. There's going to be riots in the street, arrests of an unprecedented scale, martial law enforced by the U.S. military. That's a promise of balls out there that this person sees something like this coming. And later in the copy, he makes a promise that he's actually going to show you how to not only protect yourself, but actually make money from this terrible situation coming. So I think promises are pretty self-evident, but like, you want to have the most powerful promise that you can actually fulfill. So, like, you can't just make up a promise if you're going to lose customers, really. I mean, it's kind of an ethical and legal thing to keep in mind as well, but like, the real strategy in business, I believe, is acquiring a customer and keeping a customer and the lifetime value of a customer. So, it's a pretty powerful promise for the Copy Badass offer, but hopefully it's being fulfilled right now, right? I mean, we're talking about the same things that we promised in that funnel. So if you guys, does everyone get promise? Do we need to go into that, or just put it in the chat if you get it or don't get it, or do you have any questions on promises? Okay, seems like people got that. The next one gets a little more, proof real quick. Is there a way to sequence these different types of proof in a sales letter so they hit hard? Or does it depend on the promise, big idea, et cetera? You want your most compelling proof first in the headline and lead complex. If that's where you want it. You want basically like the most powerful proof, then the next powerful proof, the next powerful proof, kind of like a pyramid where your most powerful, compelling proof is on top, and then down to your least compelling.
Yep.
Seems like everyone gets the idea of a promise with balls. All right, the next one's a little more abstract, and it's mechanisms, and it's a kind of interesting word that it's from an old copywriting book. But basically, the things that make your product work are what we call a mechanism. So you need to figure out what your product does and figure out a unique way, and it does it, and we call that a mechanism. And you want as much as possible as the mechanism, the thing in your product, to make it feel like it's going to accomplish what the prospect wants automatically. And you can see a chart here of like cold hard reality versus magic. You want to make sure like the pieces and parts of your promo that you are pulling out as mechanisms. In this case, like the content that Jason got from Baltimore when he came and visited me, that we called it Agora Copy Cheat Codes. Hopefully when you read that sales letter, if it worked correctly, they seem like magic. They seem like all you need to know is these cheat codes, you'll be better at copy. And you're getting them right now. But you can see it's when you write it, of course, you're like, oh, just give me the cheat codes. And, you actually have to learn and implement them. but like that's not why we buy things. We don't buy things for rational, logical reasons. We buy things, we want things just to do it for us. So like hopefully that gives you a picture of like what a mechanism is supposed to be. Like examples of mechanisms. We'll go back and look at some of the examples of what mechanisms are in a few minutes, like within some of those examples I've already showed you. But basically, like how you actually create a mechanism. So is the Agora Copy Engine a mechanism? Absolutely, yes. The Agora Copy Engine is the mechanism that Jason was talking about for this program. Like the impact system was a mechanism. Canadian Social Security was a mechanism. The piggybacking of Canadian Social Security, the actual way that so you can actually get the Canadian Social Security, because you can't get it if you're American, you just kind of replicate it. That's called piggybacking in the sales letter. That is a mechanism. So it's the things that make your product work.
The way I like to think about it,
the secret sauce, that's a good way to put it. The secret behind.
Yeah, the secret sauce is how I think about it. Like, what's
Yeah.
the secret sauce that makes the thing work, right? That's usually the mechanism.
And we'll get into this in the next session, but I mean, you want it as unique as possible, because uniqueness is really key. But you also want it so it's positioned in the copy as magic and not cold hard reality, because nobody wants cold hard reality. People want magic. And so in this case, like if you just figure out the Agora copy engine, your copy is going to perform at levels maybe approaching Agora's level, which is absolutely true. But if you know, like the way he framed that mechanism is pretty key. If he just said like, hey, you know, there's a process that every other company follows and Agora follows it too, that's not really as compelling, and it's going to take a lot of work to figure out how to do it. And so hopefully you guys can see like how you actually frame the mechanism is pretty key. We'll get into reframing the next session because it's kind of a high level thing. But the process of creating a mechanism, I mean, the easiest way is to actually have a secret formula that no one else has, which most people do not have. I mean, there's not a lot of things that are truly secret in the world. Another way you can look at it is what's called like an unspoken mechanism that nobody else talks about, meaning something that maybe lots of products have, but you're the first one to pull it out. It's an old copywriting book, so it's not totally relevant for today's world, but there's a great story in Claude Hopkins' book, My Life in Advertising, about how he made Schlitz beer. It's a type of beer, a brand of beer called Schlitz, the #1 brand in America, by talking about how they filter the beer more than other, like filter the beer like 7 times or something, which it turns out like all the other beer companies did, but Schlitz was the only one to like adopt that as a mechanism. So it's probably something that is maybe in your product now, in your offer now, that since no one else has talked about it, it's unique. It might not be unique to the product, but it's unique to your customer because no one's actually made a big deal of that before. There have been lots of copywriting courses promoted over the years. There's probably been copywriting courses that, and I know there's been copywriting courses that are based on Agora's method, but the way that Jason made it sound, like these cheat codes and the copy engine, made them seem really unique. So what you look for is like a part or a piece, a feature, a method, a formula, a tool, a technique, a technology, a strategy, something you can give a unique name or position as a secret. Another thing you can do is you can bundle a bunch of ordinary parts into a system too. Like Agora copy engine, as you're seeing right now, it's basically the 6 things, the process we use to put the copy. We put together like a copy engine, which is also a great metaphor, by the way. And it sounds a lot more powerful than like, hey, here are the 6 steps that Agora uses to make copy. That sounds kind of pretty boring actually, but a copy engine, that sounds pretty cool. That sounds like it's just, you know, I just turn it on like my car and it's going to drive for me. So
and one thing everyone should do, and this is a good habit to get into, is like name everything.
Yeah.
Like you should just name everything, because it, like, people, they want to buy from other people who seem to have shit figured out. And how do you demonstrate to others you got shit figured out? You got fucking formulas. You got recipes, right? You got like, oh yeah, that's the 3-wheel conversion tool, right? And that's the funnel filler, right? And yeah, and here we'll throw in a little bit of headline magic, right? And you just got names for shit. You sound like you're a magician with a bag of tricks, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here. One other way that Ryan had in his notes here, and by the way, just so everyone knows, me and Ryan have an outline, like a syllabus here that Ryan put together for each class. So if there's stuff you're missing, because I know we're like fire hosing you guys, is I'm going to share our actual personal notes with you guys after the class, so you'll be able to go through and follow along this story. I think it's gonna be really valuable for you guys as well.
Someone asked a question, is the big idea the mechanism? No, the mechanism is part of the big idea. And that's the thing, like, if you had taken this, hey, I got this thing for you called the Agora cheat codes, would that have been as powerful as Jason Capital going to Baltimore to steal the Agora cheat codes and bring them out to you? Because all the other copywriting systems out there are outdated. And by doing that, you're going to take your career, your life, and your copy to a whole different level. You see how, like, that's all those pieces of parts blend together into a big idea. And we'll get to that next session, how you connect those Legos together to get the building you're trying to create. But like the big idea, it includes mechanism for the most part, or it can, but it's not the same thing. It's just a mechanism is a component of a big idea, if that makes sense. Big idea, the story that discovered a mechanism. Again, the story is part of it. That's the hard part about describing a big idea, is it's multifaceted. It's a recombination of different elements that just stands out as a whole. So they're not the same things. They're just parts of the whole, if that makes sense. And I'll give an example of an offer I really, really love, and I know was very successful, from Chris Haddad, who's a great copywriter. And he had this idea of like, basically it was how to text your ex back, and then he had a couple other variations of it, like this one here. And like the whole idea of using text messages was his mechanism. In this case, it was like how to get your wife into bed. I'm a married man. I've been married like 11 years, so this offer caught my eye, right? So especially like as I can just, with a push of a button, get her in the sack without having to date her or buyer stuff, or like, he's not in the house right now hearing all this stuff, but like, but you can see like that's like there's a whole story behind it, and like I have the link on there if you want to watch the whole promotion on your own time. But like the mechanism on that was the text messages that can turn your life on with a push of a button. And there's a special offer of like sending a text message to get your ex back. So if you get dumped by your girlfriend, you don't have to go through all this huge humiliating process and hard work of winning her back. You just send the right text message and boom, she's back. So
everyone look at the idea Ryan's saying. He's showing you here. Like send a text message, turn your wife on, and get her in the sack right away. Like think about that idea, and then look back at the chart and ask yourself, where does it fall in this chart? Right, and you can see it's up here. It sounds like magic, right? That's how you know this is a winning idea.
And we'll get to it in a minute. We'll get to it in like a couple weeks when we get to leads and headline complex. Is that all the elements that I'm going over today are all in this particular sales letter, and you can click the link on your own and look it up yourself. But like, not all of them are in the headline, because that's not really. We're not talking about headlines. We're not talking about leads. We're just talking about the idea. Like what you see on the page there is an expression of that idea, but the idea is a lot bigger than just that. And there's a whole story of how he did it, and like how like other methods don't work, and which is kind of like a problem or a villain. There's a lot of proof that he has in the sales letter of that it actually works. So again, we're not talking about headlines in lead copy. That's just the expression of the big idea. The big idea in this you could pull out, and that's something you can add right now to your swipe file. Would be take this particular offer and promotion and see if you can find all the elements that we're talking about today. Another thing I want to bring up too is if you scroll up to Canadian Social Security, you can actually have more than one mechanism. You don't just have to have one. Though it might be, we're getting to the rule of one when we talk about leads. It can be confusing if you have too much stuff in here, but you can see that there's actually really two mechanisms. There's the whole idea of piggybacking, and then there's the idea of Canadian Social Security. There's actually two different pieces and parts that are being expressed here on the page. So it's not limited necessarily to just one mechanism. If you have too much on there, though, it can get very confusing. We'll get into that when we get into headline leads.
So Ryan, how are those two different mechanisms here?
So Canadian Social Security is the actual Canadian pension program, the strategy of the Canadian pension program, and then the legally piggybacking part of it is how Americans can buy those stocks themselves. So the whole idea of recreating the Canadian pension program with your own effort, which again sounds a lot like a lot of work and a lot of risk. Like, oh, I got to go buy like 20 different stocks, and which means I have to know how to buy stock, which means I have to take a risk of putting my money in the market. Piggybacking sounds a lot more magical than what the actual plan is that you buy as part of this product. Another example is the impact system, which has more than one mechanism. It has the impact system itself, the system, which is a mechanism, but then it's talking about this thing called currency.